Good evening. The Supreme Court has unanimously struck down the federal ban on bump stocks, devices that dramatically increase the firing speed of semi-automatic rifles. All 9 justices across the ideological spectrum agreed. The ATF overstepped its authority by reclassifying bump stocks as illegal machine guns in 2018. This case wasn't about the Second Amendment, but about who gets to make the law, Congress or federal agencies. The ruling reopens the debate over bump stocks, making them legal again at the federal level unless Congress acts. The decision highlights the separation of powers and the limits of agency authority, setting the stage for a renewed political fight over gun control. Tonight, we break down what the court decided, why, and what it means for the country. To truly understand the Supreme Court's recent ruling, we need to revisit a pivotal moment in American history. In October 2017, the Las Vegas Strip became the site of the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. A lone gunman, perched high in the Mandalay Bay Hotel, used bump stocks, devices that allow semi-automatic rifles to mimic the rapid fire of machine guns, to unleash a torrent of bullets. In just 11 minutes, he fired over 1,000 rounds into a crowd of concert-goers below. The attack left 60 people dead and wounded hundreds more, shattering lives and sending shockwaves across the nation. The aftermath was marked by scenes of chaos, heroism, and profound grief, as first responders rushed to save the injured and communities mourned the loss. In the wake of this tragedy, there was a rare moment of unity. Politicians from both parties, advocacy groups, and everyday citizens called for immediate action to ban bump stocks, arguing that such devices had no place in civilian hands. Responding to public outcry, the Trump administration directed the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF, to reconsider its previous stance. In 2018, after a period of review, the ATF reclassified bump stocks as machine guns under federal law, effectively banning them nationwide and requiring owners to surrender or destroy their devices. One of those owners was Michael Cargill, a gun shop proprietor in Austin, Texas. Although he complied with the new rule and turned in his bump stocks, Cargill believed the government had overstepped. He argued that the ATF, an executive agency, did not have the authority to create new criminal penalties by reinterpreting existing laws. Only Congress could do that. Cargill's lawsuit wasn't about the safety or danger of bump stocks themselves. Instead, it raised a fundamental question about the separation of powers. Who gets to decide what the law says? Congress or federal agencies? As the case made its way through the courts, federal judges across the country reached different conclusions. Some upheld the ban, deferring to the ATF's interpretation, while others sided with Cargill, insisting that only Congress could make such sweeping changes. This disagreement among the lower courts, known as a circuit split, meant the issue was too important and too unsettled to ignore. The Supreme Court was compelled to step in and provide a definitive answer. The stage was set for a landmark showdown, not just about bump stocks, but about the very limits of agency power and the meaning of the law itself. At its core, the case would determine whether federal agencies can effectively rewrite statutes through regulation, or if that power is reserved exclusively for Congress, as the Constitution intends. The outcome would ripple far beyond the issue of bump stocks, influencing how future regulations are made and who holds the ultimate authority in shaping American law. In essence, this legal battle was about drawing the boundaries of executive authority, how much power agencies like the ATF should have, and where their limits lie. The Supreme Court's decision would not only resolve the fate of bump stocks, but also set a precedent that could shape the future of regulatory actions across a wide range of issues. And remarkably, it all began with a single tragic night in Las Vegas, a night that changed lives, laws, and the ongoing debate over the balance of power in America. To really understand the court's reasoning, it's important to first break down exactly what a bump stock is and how it works. This device has been at the center of heated legal and political debates, but its mechanics are surprisingly simple. A bump stock is a plastic accessory that replaces a rifle's standard stock. Unlike a regular stock, which is fixed, a bump stock is designed to allow the entire rifle to slide back and forth along the shooter's shoulder. This sliding motion is key to how the device operates. When using a bump stock, the shooter holds their finger steady on the trigger, By pushing the rifle forward, the gun's recoil causes it to slide back, which in turn bumps the trigger against the shooter's stationary finger. This process repeats rapidly, allowing the rifle to fire much faster than it normally would. Importantly, the trigger still resets and must be re-engaged for every single shot. This is different from a true machine gun, which fires multiple rounds with just one continuous pull of the trigger. With a bump stock, each shot still technically requires a separate trigger action. The device cleverly uses both the shooter's forward pressure and the natural recoil of the gun to mimic the rapid fire of an automatic weapon, even though the internal mechanics remain semi-automatic. This seemingly small mechanical distinction, how the trigger functions, became the central issue in the legal battle over bump stocks. The big legal question was whether a bump stock effectively transforms a semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun under federal law, or if it remains a semi-automatic because of how the trigger operates. The answer depended on how the law defines a single function of the trigger. Is it the shooter's finger movement, or the mechanical action inside the gun? The Supreme Court ultimately focused on the technical mechanics of the device, rather than the shooter's intent or the rapid rate of fire it produces. In this case, the technical details of how a bump stock works mattered far more than public perception or emotional arguments. That's what made this case so complex, and why its outcome is so significant for gun laws and future legal debates in America. The legal argument in this case centered on the language of the National Firearms Act of 1934, a landmark piece of legislation that has shaped American gun law for nearly a century. This act was one of the first federal attempts to regulate certain types of firearms, and its definitions have had lasting consequences. Specifically, the act defines a machine gun as any weapon that is capable of firing more than one shot automatically, without manual reloading, by a single function of the trigger. This definition has been the foundation for decades of legal interpretation and enforcement. Traditionally, this meant a firearm that continues to discharge bullets as long as the shooter keeps the trigger pressed down, with no need to release and pull the trigger again for each shot. However, the ATF argued that bump stocks, which use the gun's recoil to rapidly reset and fire, effectively allow a shooter's single action, pulling the trigger once, to unleash a continuous stream of bullets, mimicking the function of a machine gun. On the other side, Cargill's lawyers insisted that the law is clear. For each shot fired, the trigger must physically reset and be pulled again. In their view, this mechanical reset means a bump stock-equipped rifle is not a true machine gun under the law. They demonstrated how, even with a bump stock, the trigger still moves back and forth, requiring a separate action for every round fired. The Supreme Court was faced with a fundamental question. Does the law focus on what the shooter does, or on the internal mechanics of the trigger itself? At its core, this case was about statutory interpretation, how to read and apply the words Congress wrote, not about the wisdom or policy behind gun regulation. The justices pored over the text, examining its plain meaning, historical context, and how it has been understood over time. The outcome of this case would set a precedent, clarifying the boundaries of how much power agencies like the ATF have to interpret and enforce laws. It was a technical debate, but one with significant implications for gun owners, regulators, and the legal system. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's role was to act as referee, ensuring that the words Congress chose are faithfully applied, and that the law is interpreted as written. Justice Clarence Thomas, writing for the majority, focused on the law's text. He explained that a machine gun fires multiple shots with one trigger pull. A bump stock doesn't do that. With a bump stock, the trigger must reset between shots, just as with a fast trigger finger. The device speeds up firing, but doesn't change the gun's fundamental mechanics. The opinion wasn't about whether bump stocks are dangerous, but about agency limits. Thomas wrote, "Only Congress can change the law, not the ATF." The ruling was a defense of textualism, interpreting statutes by their ordinary meaning. The message, if the law is outdated, Congress must fix it. Justice Sotomayor, joined by the liberal justices, agreed on the legal point, but issued a warning. She described how bump stocks enable rapid fire, making rifles function like machine guns in practice. Her message: the court's decision reopens a dangerous loophole Congress meant to close. She called on lawmakers to act, arguing the real-world consequences could be deadly. Sotomayor's opinion highlighted the tension between legal interpretation and public safety. She urged Congress to ban bump stocks explicitly. The court settled the law, but the safety debate is far from over. The ruling goes beyond bump stocks. It's a major statement on federal agency power. The court said agencies can't fundamentally change laws or create new crimes without clear congressional authorization. This reinforces the major questions doctrine. Big policy changes require explicit approval from Congress. Gun rights advocates see this as a victory and may challenge other ATF rules. For regulation supporters, it's a setback. Future changes will require new laws, not agency action. The decision weakens executive flexibility in crises, shifting responsibility to Congress. The precedent will shape agency actions across many issues. The Supreme Court's decision puts the bump stock debate in Congress's hands. President Biden and Democrats called for a legislative ban, but passing one will be tough in a divided Congress. Republicans and gun rights groups praised the ruling, arguing it protects both the law and gun owners' rights. The fight over bump stocks is now a political battle, likely to feature in upcoming elections. Some states already ban bump stocks. This ruling doesn't affect those laws. The question of a nationwide ban is now open. The future depends on Congress's ability to act or voters' choices at the ballot box. The legal lines are clear, but the political path is uncertain. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision is a reminder. Laws are made by Congress, not agencies. All 9 justices affirmed that legislative power belongs to elected representatives. The ruling clarifies that even in crisis, government can't bypass the Constitution. If laws are unclear or outdated, Congress must amend them. The debate over bump stocks now moves to the political arena, shaped by public opinion and your vote. This is a call for civic engagement. Hold your lawmakers accountable. The court defined the law's boundaries. The nation's priorities are up to the people. In our democracy, the final authority rests with you.